Welcome to Type C Tech Reviews. Today we're going to be reviewing the Gigabyte M34WQ, sometimes the M34WQC. If at any point during the video you want to check out this exact same monitor, there's Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links, but let's jump into the review. So right away, this is a 34-inch ultrawide with a resolution of 3440 by 1440p, aka ultrawide 1440p. Now, talking about the PPI or pixels per inch, essentially how clear or crisp the image is gonna be, this does have a good PPI at about 109. This would be the same as a 1440p 27-inch 16:9 monitor. This means the image will be crisp and clear. Text will be crisp, and games will also be crisp and clear, which is what you want to see. All right, now beyond that, this is a flat panel, but the most unusual thing is that this is an IPS panel. Now, this is around $500, and in the $500 gaming ultrawide segment, basically all the other competitors are VA panels. So this thing sets itself apart because it is an IPS and a flat panel. And spoiler alert, it doesn't do everything perfectly, but it's really good. All right, now this hits a max refresh rate of 144 Hertz. Now this does have FreeSync and it does work with G-Sync, which is awesome. However, it is not NVIDIA certified. So this is not NVIDIA certified G-Sync, but it does work with G-Sync. So that's really awesome. Now I will say that you cannot use it over HDMI or USB-C for that matter. You can only use it through DisplayPort. So I don't think most of you will have a problem with that unless you have a laptop, but then mini DisplayPort maybe, or maybe not. But yeah, through DisplayPort, the G-Sync works great, which is awesome. All right, now the brightness. This thing is advertised to hit 400 nits of brightness, which is pretty good. It's nothing amazing. However, it falls short of that by quite a bit, actually. This hits a max brightness through my testing. Really 340 nits is its max. It's typically around 315. You'll see some spots where it peaks out at 340 nits. Now, this is good. This is not bad at all. However, if you're thinking that this has 400 nits because of what it says advertised, it's just not getting 400 nits. It's getting about 340, 330. But you might be like, that's just for HDR. It's just its peak brightness. Well, in HDR, it scores less. Like HDR on this thing is bad. It's like really bad. If you were hoping that it was gonna be good at HDR, it's not. I would never use this thing in HDR. Absolutely, absolutely not what it's for. So yeah, HDR, no go. The typical brightness, and I know it sounds like I'm being really critical of this, but it's still a good brightness. Like I still like the brightness and I think it's a solid monitor. However, it's 330, 340 nits, which is good, but it's not 400. But that being said, I still like it. Now, if you're in a dimmer room or you have windows like my window has the deck over it, so the deck's right there, I'm on the lower level, this is not a big deal in this room at all. I mean, I have lights in the room, but when I'm gaming, they're pretty much mostly like dim or out, and I never had issues with the reflections or anything at all, and the matte display on this thing is really good. So that being said, I don't think it's that big of an issue. Unless your room has a lot of direct sunlight like all the time, that may be an issue. In the room that I personally grew up with, I had a lot of direct sunlight at the end of the day, especially in the winter, and this monitor probably wouldn't have been good for me then, but now it's like totally fine. So it totally depends on your room setup, but if you do have a dimmer room or if you only play at night, brightness is totally fine. And it does look good. All right, now colors. This is pretty good, covering 91% of the DCI P3 color space. Because this is an IPS panel rather than a VA panel, the colors just look better. IPS panels just typically look a little bit more vibrant than a VA panel, as well as the fact that you won't get that kind of washing out effect that you get with a VA panel if you kind of move side to side. So with this one, you have fantastic viewing angles, absolutely no problems, as well as the fact that out of the box, it had pretty good color accuracy, which I was actually really impressed with. Now, this can change dependent on each individual model, so you can't take my word that yours is gonna be as accurate as mine was, but yeah, I was pretty impressed. The other thing that I was pretty impressed with is that this could actually output 10 bits of color, which I definitely was not expecting. I was expecting them to cut a lot more corners than they did being an IPS panel at this price point. However, yeah, it's pretty good. This thing uses an 8-bit native panel, and then it uses frame rate control or FRC to then output 10 bits of color, which is pretty much what every other gaming monitor, even high-end ones, do at this point. So don't think that you're gonna get like a native 10-bit panel in basically any gaming monitor now, because you just don't. you just don't have that. That's just not a thing. All right, now contrast ratio. This is not the best, obviously, because it's an IPS panel. That's probably the biggest trade-off when you get an IPS over a VA panel. You're just not gonna have the deepest blacks in the world like you will with a VA panel. And there's just not much more to say about that. And really quick, I just do wanna say this also has picture-in-picture and picture-by-picture, and it has a KVM switch, which for some of you may be pretty massive, although for me, doesn't really make that big of a deal, but I thought I should mention it. All right, now response time and ghosting. This is a big pro over the competition VA panels. Now, this has much lower response time than the VA panel competitors. And how does that translate into ghosting? Well, it's very good. It's basically imperceptible in any game. Like, it's absolutely imperceptible in any game. Doing controlled tests allow you to see a little bit of ghosting. Now, there is a fair amount of ghosting for an IPS panel with the lowest response time setting or the overdrive setting. Now, if you set it into balanced and speed, those are the two settings I would recommend. In balance, there's a very, very micro amount of ghosting. In speed, there's a tiny bit of pixel overshooting or inverse ghosting, but there's no typical ghosting. So I would say the best one to leave it in would be balanced, although either of them would be fine. Now, I do want to say, this is not as good as LG's IPS panels. They have the absolute best ghosting in the game. They're not going to be beat probably for a very long time. They have that on lock. But for like literally 100% of you, you won't notice the difference between a high-end IPS LG monitor and this monitor with ghosting. It's very good. So yeah, absolutely fantastic with ghosting. All right, now I want to talk about the overall real-life gaming experience and performance that I've found while testing this monitor. Now, I use this as my everyday monitor. I edited videos on it. I did a ton of gaming with Halo Infinite and Insurgency Sandstorm and some other games as well. And I tested this thing, well, not even really tested. I just lived with it as my main monitor for many, many hours of gameplay. Firstly, the biggest thing is I came from a 34-inch 1000R curved monitor, an ultra-wide monitor. If you don't know a 1000R curve, it's a quite aggressive curve, like probably the most aggressive in the industry. So it was very, very like shocking to me coming to a flat panel. That being said, it did take some time for me to get used to it, although it may not for you if you don't have a curved monitor at the moment, but it took me about 4 days. After 4 days, that's when it didn't seem like it was bending the other way. At this point now, where I've been using it for, I don't know, a very long time, probably almost a month at this point, that effect is completely gone. And honestly, at this point, I don't really miss the curve unless I look at a curved monitor. Then I start to see the difference. That being said, for the price point, it may or may not be worth it to you. Now, for the VA panel ultrawides, my top pick and my most recommended monitor was the Dell S3422DWG. That has a curve. It's not super aggressive, but it's definitely a curve that is noticeable. And that one is also in this $500 price point. Now, I can't say buy the Dell over this monitor, and I can't say buy this monitor over the Dell because they both have their strengths and their weaknesses, and I love both of them, and I would probably use both of them every single day as my main monitor, basically for until the better one comes out. They're both really, really good and polished. However, if you're on the fence between the two and your price point is about $500, I'll tell you at the end of the video which one to buy. But now let's go over some of the other stats before we finish up the review. All right, the menu system and controls. The menu system and the KVM switch is over there on the right side. Not my favorite placement, but not a big deal unless you're doing a dual monitor setup, which would be very cool, although less cool with a flat panel. That would be one thing where a flat panel would be not as nice. So, however, this uses a single joystick. Like I said, the Gigabyte menu system is not at all pretty. It's like very basic and definitely needs to be updated. However, it works perfectly fine. There's no lag. It's very quick. And there's basically no learning curve, and everything's pretty fast to get to. So no real problems there. It's just not pretty. Like LG's is very pretty, and I like that one a lot. All right, now basic compatibility. This is compatible with 100mm by 100mm base mounts. This would be a great monitor to mount on a monitor arm. All right, now this does have internal speakers, but they are not the best like basically every other monitor speakers. However, they are better than other bad monitor speakers. They're still bad speakers, don't get me wrong, but they're definitely better. The bar is set very low, as it should be, because who really uses them. They get much louder than I expected. They're quite muffled, but they actually have some bass, which is cool. Now, these will work in a pinch, or if you just basically all the time use headphones, but you need some sort of speaker, this will absolutely work, and it's definitely much better than typical monitor speakers. All right, ports are great. This has two HDMI 2.0s, one DisplayPort 1.4, a USB Type-C with 15 watts of charging, which is very cool. It then has a USB Type-B upstream, and then two USB Type-A's and a 3.5mm audio out. So they got some like USBs in there, which is awesome. They got the USB-C with charging, which is very cool. And then everything else is pretty typical, but it's very cool that they added all of that. But I think the ports are very good. All right, stand and build quality. This doesn't have quite as good of quality as like LG or some like companies like Dell. However, it is pretty good. It's a very strong base. It's an incredibly stable base. But one of the things that I do like about it, the stand and the base, is that the base is actually pretty flat. So if you did want to actually use it as kind of more desk space, you can. Like if you needed to set a pen down there or your phone or something like that, you can set it on the stand, whereas other ones where they kind of curve out or do some crazy design aren't as usable. So I do actually like that. Now beyond that, it has height adjustability, it has tilt, and it has swivel built into the base, which is my favorite place for it to be. And it's actually got quite a bit of swivel. So overall, the stand full pass, it does a great job. Overall, this is an awesome monitor in a spot that we've been in desperate need of. If you have a budget for about $500 and value good colors, good viewing angles, and super low ghosting over super deep blacks, a much higher brightness, and an immersive curve, this monitor is great for you. If you value the latter more, I do recommend the Dell S3422DWG. But again, if you do want to go check out this monitor or the Dell, I'll link them both below to Amazon for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. I'll also link somewhere here the actual review that I did of the Dell S3422DWG. These are basically tied for different reasons, and that's why I can't say buy this one or buy that one, because really they're two really fantastic monitors at a really fantastic price point that are basically built for two different people. You may value all of the things and you're just gonna have to make that decision, or just buy the LG, which is the LG GP83AB, I think. That one is like by far the best monitor out there, but it's also $800 if it's in stock. If it's not, it's usually like $1,000. So it's definitely considerably more, and these are like very budget friendly and you get a ton of value for your money. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video and it helped you out, help me out and throw a like below. And if you enjoy other videos, monitor reviews, monitor unboxings, I do a ton of them, so please consider subscribing below. But this was Type C Tech Reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next video.